The South African wine industry is one of the most vibrant in the world, and whether you're investing in a bottle of quality wine or for a special occasion, or thinking more ambitiously about an investment in a wine farm, the sector has something for everyone. While we all know that there's pleasure in wine, the real question is whether or not there's money to be made in this alternative investment or not. And joining us for more is Ryan Surrey. He's the Managing Director of salewine.co.za, and from Cape Town, David March at Cape Wine Master joins us as well. Ryan, let's start off with you. Money to be made investing in the sector or not?
There certainly is, but not within the South African realm of things. Investment in wine is largely a European-based business. Its sales and purchases happen out of the Middle East, the UK and the UK and America. It's an interesting business in that you need to have a very strong track record in the products you buy. And South Africa, as a relatively new wine industry, doesn't have that track record as yet.
Right, I suppose one of the questions is, how do you actually make money? Do you buy a bottle and hang on to it for a couple of years and hope to sell it back? Do you kind of back brands and hope that they succeed? Where's the money to actually be made in this?
No, that's exactly what you don't do. It's a very professional business in wine trading, and what you need to look for is buying a Premier out of France. You only buy first growth Bordeaux because that's the only thing that's really traded. There you're starting at a price point of at least £3,000 a case. And the case is as important as the wine. You want to have that wooden case on. You're going to store it in the perfect conditions. It has to be a registered seller, London Wine Bond or Octavian Cellars. And from there, you're never going to touch that wine. It's going to go eventually on auction, maybe 5 years down the line. It's going to be sold on Livex. It's going to be sold at Christie's or Sotheby's to somebody else who's probably going to leave it exactly where it was and resell it again in a few years' time.
So no one's ever going to drink this wine?
You're going to have a lot of money to warrant opening a case which is worth 160,000 rand. That's a lot of expensive drinking to be done.
Of course, the prices are all determined, David, by the kind of supply-demand dynamic that we're actually looking at. So give us an assessment of that, because that's what drives commodity prices higher to start off with, the kind of demand-supply scenario we're faced with.
Demand is still very good across the world, especially in Asia at the moment, despite the recession that's across the world, really. In fact, it's very hard to accumulate these wines unless you have access to that market. So for the individual purchaser, it would be very difficult to buy any first growth Bordeaux in any reasonable quantity, because most of them are already allocated long before the market gets wind of it. So the demand, despite what is happening across the world, is still very high, which drives the prices.
Yep.
Yeah, Ryan, maybe one of the questions I would have, again, I'm a simple man, I'm a journalist, I know red and white. Firstly, is it, we're kind of joking about, do you buy red or do you buy white? But what are the actual vintages or specific types of wine that are kind of in demand at the moment?
The local brands which are really showing well, and you could say there's a bit of investment because they're going to go up in price probably at least 10 to 15% a year. So if you've got a decent cellar and you're going to sell it away, you're going to make your money by buying it now and drinking it later. Things like Meerlust, Rustenburg, Boekenhout's Kloof, the more premium brands, and there are a lot of up-and-coming guys as well. The Molyneux guys out in the Swartland are doing some wonderful wines at the moment. Pete's First Verse is a lovely wine, second vintage, really running with 5 stars. They're not going to cost you a fortune. You're probably looking at between 300 and 600 rand a bottle at the top end, and those are probably going to end up being close to 1,000 inside of 10 years' time. So if you lay that down, great. Don't lay down the everyday drinking stuff you've just picked up at the supermarket or off a bottle store shelf. You don't know where it's come from, you don't know how long it's been there. You want to buy something that's got provenance, so directly from the farm through a retailer, for you in that personal capacity, or maybe even directly from the farm yourself and ask them to store it if they've got that sort of facility.
Ryan, where you're looking at the returns, and we're talking about the kind of returns to be reaped here, you've also got to, as an investor, take a look at the risk that you're taking on. What kind of risk as an investor are you facing here? Because, it's consumers venturing down this path, taking the kind of risk in investing in alternative investments where they can't find value anywhere else. But it's not to say that this comes without any.
The international market for investing in wine, those first growth Bordeaux, it's relatively safe in that you're going to be purchasing hopefully from a very reputable supplier. You're going to be cellaring it, and you've been an accredited facility to have cellared that, and then you're going to sell it through a registered platform. So there's a sort of a guarantee all the way through there. There is no council that looks after these sort of things.
Isn't that the problem, though, that you're
That is
not
the
looking
problem.
at a regulated market at the end of the day?
Quite correct. And there's a lot of fake wine that's coming back out of the East, relabeled Lafite, relabeled whatever it may be. It could be anything in the bottle. But that comes down to knowing what you're trying to get hold of and trusting the sources and the resale options that you've got involved in. But you do need to know a lot about the market. Lafite Rothschild in 2004 to now has grown 800% up in value. So there's plenty of return to be had out of it, but you have to make that investment in the first place and understand the market. And there are not many people in the world who trade in this sort of thing and understand the market.
And a secondary market in South Africa? I know you were saying it virtually doesn't exist, but
Yeah, it doesn't exist.
At all?
First of all, if you've purchased the wine from South Africa, you're probably going to be leaving it in the UK. You're never going to bring it over. The stuff that's coming in is going to be for consumption. It's come over the equator, it's been stored, it's been moved around quite a bit. It's not going to have the same sort of value as leaving the cellar, going to the bond store and lying still in perfect conditions for a while.
David, your advice on mitigating against some of the risk if you're choosing to invest in the wine space right now, because any investor has got to look at diversifying their portfolio, so to speak. So what diversification options are we looking at here?
Well, funnily enough, South Africa fits very nicely in that diversification idea, because a lot of experts believe that investing in solely the top 50, 100 or 500 investable wines, which are mostly Bordeaux, as we've said, is not really the safest option, because there is no diversification there. And South Africa fits as a risk factor, certainly, but it also means high risk, high reward potential. So yes, there is a risk involved in this, but we're nicely positioned, and a lot of experts that I've spoken to are saying that there's absolutely no reason why there couldn't be a secondary market here in South Africa to trade foreign and South African wines at the top end. It really is a question of confidence and security and getting people interested, because the wine drinking nation in South Africa is not a particularly large one.
What exactly are we looking at?
In terms of number of wines here to invest, probably
or
in
in terms of
dozens.
interest from from investors, from South African investors?
Well, I've been told that the market for investing in South African and foreign wines here is possibly as few as 2,000. That's individual people. But, you know, this is the beginning. This is the start of everything. And I think everybody has said to me that if you're brave enough to take a chance now is the time to invest, because the potential is that South African wines in particular can only go upwards once the world discovers the quality of some of our wines. In fact, a lot of our wines.
I've picked up a very interesting comment from Rick Ealing, who's the head of investment solutions at Sanlam UK, and he says bottles of wine are not investments. Investments are supposed to earn you money, and yet wine pays no dividends, no interest, no rent. In fact, it's a heavy storage cost. People invest in the business expecting them to grow over time, yet all wine eventually peaks and decays. You're at the risk of counterfeiting, theft and fire. You'll enjoy only a few, if any, of the protections offered to investors in regulated funds. Do you see this becoming a more regulated environment, Ryan?
No, I don't see it becoming a more regulated environment. It's right now, it's not the darling of the South African government. It's not supported at all. There certainly is potential for growth of the South African brand and the quality wines that we have, but it's about support for these wines and the image of South African wines in the overseas markets. That's where the value is going to come from. We are a very limited market. For fine wine in South Africa, I'd be surprised if there were 100 people. For fine wine in the world, it's a total market of about $4 billion, which is not very big in the greater scheme of what wine is consumed. We drink wine in South Africa, we enjoy our wonderful wines, they are great quality, we look for value in them. To invest, and I hope, I actually got a call today from somebody saying their child just got born, 2012, they'd like a wine to put away and give to them at the age of 21. My first comment is normally rather buy a port, because it's probably not going to last for 21 years. You're probably not going to have the facility to store it like that, and Lord knows you might be 18 and just drink it. Just get it out of the fridge. So there's all different ways of looking at the market. Right now in South Africa, you buy wine to enjoy to drink it, store away enough that's going to last you a couple of years, and there's a nice little nest egg for you not to worry about your future. Not to sell, but to just enjoy.
Yeah, I think just listening to Rick's comment, I mean, if you kind of took the wine context away from it, you'd actually think she actually sounds a lot like a lot of the financial services products that are peddled. No dividends, no unregulated. But I mean, like, jokes aside though, I mean, like, is there enough being done by South African government? I mean, you touched on it briefly, to encourage people to invest, not just in wine as an investment, but as a broader sector, you know, establishing wine farms, establishing secondary markets. I get the sense that from people I've spoken to, the tax setup isn't ideal, importing and exporting is not easy. We just don't seem to be doing enough to contribute toward an existing ecosystem.
Yeah, that certainly is the case. There's very little support for the South African wine industry. It's left to fend for itself. It's seen as a rich man's industry, although it's the majority earner for tax revenue for the Western Cape, which is very important. With new farm wages, it is going to put a little dent on things. Maybe less so than your fresh fruit market, but it's going to affect things down the line. There hasn't been support within the marketing for any of the South African wine products. If you make the comparisons between what the US and France, Italy, Spain do to support their producers, it's not heading in the right direction. We can hope it is, but right now it's not.
Yeah. And it would to be getting the interest of a very specific kind of investor as well.
It would. Buying of farms nowadays is a bad idea, quite frankly. There aren't that many who are making any money in this current environment. With the fall in the rand, everything is getting a little more expensive. One hopes that would bring extra income in on exports, but no one's buying in Europe. So there's a lot of wine available right now. Buying a farm, long-term investment, if it's a place for you to stay, and a little hobby, and it's not going to cost you too much money, great. You're not going to make much money off it. Unless you are serious in the industry, like players like Fairview, Distell are making a very good return on their products still. But there are very few and far between that are making money out of the South African wine industry at the moment.